Let's talk about new player etiquette. So if you're new to Foxhole, or even you may be a little bit experienced and you're starting to notice that maybe some of the other experienced players or some of the newer players might be getting frustrated with the things that you're doing, and you kind of want to know what the issue is, right? That's what we're here to talk about today. New player etiquette. It's just a standard. These are some tips to help you avoid all the drama on the battlefield, because we're here to win. That's what we're here to do. Let's start. Now, I'm a big proponent of play how you want to play. I also want to maximize the amount of fun that I have while I'm playing Foxhole. So you may have questions that pop up while you're playing Foxhole, like, hey, why are these people acting like that? Well, this video serves as a guide to help explain what the expectation is and what the etiquette should be of new players based on a more experienced player. Not that it justifies anybody talking down to people. It's just an etiquette guide. So communication basics. Default is T to talk in local or proximity chat for quick coordination during battle. You can also join squads. At the right hand corner, there's a little squad tab. You can press buttons, learn how to navigate that. And typically speaking, when you're in a squad, you're going to want to keep comms clear and information clear and concise during battles. Just prioritize critical information like enemy location, enemy vehicles, the needs of the infantry, and coordinate that way. Try not to spam comms if you're in squad. Typically for local chat or proximity chat, it's just T to activate, and you do the same thing. You coordinate with people around. Also, you can have fun. The etiquette portion of it is just don't spam. People tend to get annoyed when you spam stuff. I mean, some people play music in game, and some people like it, some people don't. You can always hold Alt, click over somebody to lower or increase their volume. Additionally, you can press F1, right click on them, and then it'll also give you that volume option as well. So the next topic we're going to discuss is respect for team resources. Now, this used to be a big issue, right, in Foxhole. Earlier, in previous updates, there was an issue with hoarding supplies and hoarding vehicles. Ever since they implemented new systems like the stockpile system, which we won't get into that because that's a separate video. They implemented like a stockpile system. You can private or public stockpiles, and you can now store vehicles or supplies. We don't really run into that issue, but what you don't want to be doing is you don't want to be jumping in vehicles, taking tanks or taking trucks with supplies in them and just parking them somewhere for later use. That's not what the game's about. Most of the game, it's all public access. So if you go to the back line and you drive a tank all the way down from the back line to the front line and it doesn't die, you use it. I mean, it's one game session. Just unlock it, give it to somebody else. Try not to hoard it. Refrain from locking vehicles that aren't yours unless it's like absolutely necessary, right? Unless there's like no defenses nearby, the enemy can jump in it, steal it, press L, lock it themselves, and then now you got your allies shooting at the truck, or AI shooting at the truck because it's now the enemy's truck. So try not to lock things, try not to hoard things. Typically hoarding's not a big issue, but it's good to mention. It's food for thought. So requesting vehicles and equipment, this is a big section. Requesting is huge. Most Foxhole players, most big regiments, most members are gonna help you. The community is extremely helpful. They're also extremely protective and defensive. But if you just ask for help, if you ask for something, somebody is most likely gonna assist you, give you that thing that you're asking for, point you in the right direction. Because what they don't want is they don't want you not requesting stuff and then taking stuff without permission. So always check to see if somebody else is using a vehicle before you see it on the battlefield. I usually just hit them with the, hey, is anybody using this truck? I need to use it for this or that. Nobody says anything? Cool. If somebody's asking for their truck, let them know I'll be back in a couple minutes. Avoid jumping into tanks and artillery without asking permission from the crew. Tankers hate that for a variety of different reasons, mainly because they went through the time and effort to get that tank there, which the time and effort varies on a large scale, right? I mean, huge scales. If you don't know anything about it, just know that the time it takes to build or get a tank fueled and there varies from about an hour to like a week. Why? Because there are some things in Foxhole that just take that long to make, right? So always check before jumping in a tank or jumping onto artillery. You know, make sure people are okay with it and they want to play with you. They probably want to play with you. If there is nobody there, they would definitely want you on. You're on their team. They want you to play with them. They just probably have a full team. You probably don't know what you're doing. They probably need somebody a little more experienced, and that's okay. You know what I mean? There's always something else for you to do. You can always jump in another tank. There's just some things that are a little more sensitive than others. Return vehicles when you're done with them. Now, that happens rarely. I always return tanks that we're making to their location simply because most of the tanks that I'm using are part of my regiment. So I'll be returning tanks after we're done using them because they're usually expensive. Trucks, you're probably okay if you just take them to Seaport. It's probably more important to return vehicles to a base when you take them without permission, right? But I digress. Now, this one's probably going to be more important if you want to be a team player. If you want to play solo and you don't want to listen to anybody, I would advise just try not to step on people's toes because people tend to get annoyed and you'll either get shot by an MG or bayoneted. If you want to, work with people, I would always advise, listening to the experienced players. There's going to always be experienced players on the battlefield no matter where you go. I highly doubt that there's not experienced players nearby that are in comms telling you what to do, telling you what they need. There's always going to be experienced players. I recommend following their lead, asking them what they need help with, asking them what they think is going on, either on the battlefield or in the backline. So be open to tips from veteran players. Veteran players are not trying to hurt you. Some of them tend to be a little bit salty, maybe even burnt out, which may be the reason why you get varied responses. But when it comes to combat roles and logistics and how they're connected, experienced players typically know what they're talking about. So try to listen to them. Another thing that I would recommend just as a new player etiquette is if you really like the game Foxhole and you're getting into it and you want to understand it more in depth, one of the first things you should try to do, and you should try to speed run it, is understand logistics and how to effectively contribute. There are logistical players who spend most of their time just supplying the front lines. Try not to criticize them. Try not to rush them. Without logistic players, we don't fight. We lose every single time. Logistics is definitely a really underappreciated role, especially by new players, because typically you don't know how in-depth it is. You don't know the time and energy that is put in. Typically, new players understand logistics to the sense that you understand you get in a truck and you drive to some place like a supply depot or seaport and grab boxes and then take it to where you need it. That is like the entry level of logistics. That doesn't encompass anything beyond transportation. So, try to learn a little bit more about logistics if you can. Avoid wasting fuel and driving trucks, recklessly, just crashing trucks in the enemy. That's typically a waste. If you're unfamiliar with logistics, ask for guidance. Ask for help. Have somebody explain it or watch a YouTube video. I got a good YouTube video on it. Try to learn, Now, one thing that's unavoidable, but you want to try to avoid it, is friendly fire. Always be cautious when firing near friendly troops or buildings. Nobody likes that one person who just is shooting in the middle of the night and they're shooting in the direction of the enemy, but they don't realize that there's friendly in front of them, right? There's friendlies in front of you. You can't see, you just know they're over there. So you jump on that MG and you start letting loose. Well, the enemies might not even be there. You might just be hitting friendlies in the back. So that could be annoying if it's a consistent issue, but typically you should be good because friendly fire is unavoidable unless you're doing it intentionally, which could be an issue. You could get one of those community bans. Somebody could type your name in chat. So everybody ban this guy. They check your activity log, and you have all these friendly fires, and then you get community banned. So, just try to apologize if you feel like you need to, if you cause excessive damage to teammates or vehicles, and I'll always offer to help repair if you take a shot with an explosive or throw something and it damages a vehicle. So there's also a map etiquette, and if you press M, you get this nice big map that you can zoom in and out to with a bunch of different markers that you probably don't know what they are. You got to study it. You can make a map post by right clicking, but don't make random map posts, right? Like there's some unique, funny map posts that you can make, but if you're making in an area where somebody needs to make an important map marker, it might outshine one map marker or even completely cover a map marker if you're just putting down map markers with useless information on the map just to make a funny joke. It's fun to make those funny jokes. Just do it like somewhere where there's not frontline battle going on or isn't in an area of importance. So that's one thing. Also, just remember if there's a map marker that you see when you're opening the map and it's important, it looks like, oh, logi list, critical infrastructure, we need a QRF, quick response force, upvote that. It don't hurt you. It only helps the person who, needs that information to be out there and stay there on the map. If you're placing a FOB or other structure, make sure you don't block roads or supply routes, right? Like you don't want to be making a forward operating base or a bunker base that's like blocking stuff with either gates or trenches. You can't block roads with trenches in the game, but there are ways to build that you could block. Just try to make sure you're keeping the roads clear and you're not building infrastructure in ways that restrict logistical supply chains. So like just off the side of the road, if somebody's building, a forward operating base, a BB, try not to block entrance into the BB with a trench or something. Typically people make BBs in a C shape, and I'll provide pictures on screen of like what the potential BB layout looks like, but typically you don't block it a route that would lead into the bunker base for supplies to be delivered. So food for thought. So try to avoid like quote unquote griefing or trolling, and it's prevalent in Foxhole just like it is other games. You just do it differently, right? Like don't intentionally block roads, don't try to destroy friendly structures. Most of the time you can't, right? You throw up, like you can even test it out. You shoot a friendly structure and it'll say, oh, you can't destroy it. The friendly structure doesn't take any damage. Don't disrupt operations. Those are important. Operations being conducted that are coordinated are really important for the push. Report toxic players instead of engaging them with arguments or any way of engagement, and that means even just getting in a firefight with them. Like it's just not necessary. Just try to have fun. Join squads and work together, right? Like you can create squads easy on the right hand side. Also, if you click the magnifying glass, you can search for all the local squads that are in the area, and you can also search for the global squads. They leave them open for a reason. I'd be surprised. You have to manually click unlock to unlock the squads. So I'd be surprised if people get upset if you're joining squads asking questions. I usually look for squads that are, in the area, and I'll join them and have fun with them too. Typically, I run my own squad and I'll invite people to it from the area. But try to work together and coordinate. The most important thing in the game is communication, right? It doesn't hurt to have somebody in the squad with you just in case you need to press G to relay information to people around you, right? Because you can press T and you could do local proximity, but only the people around you are hearing it. It's much more beneficial to have everybody around you in a squad, even if it's just a few people. It doesn't have to be everybody, right? So follow squad objectives and try to contribute, even if you're new to the game, right? So try not to get super frustrated. And I'm saying try, right? When you lose a vehicle, you lose supplies, you die. Foxhole is simply put a war of attrition. Loss happens all the time. A tank will drive to the battlefield. Two tanks will drive to the battlefield. One tank will last 5 seconds, the other tank will last 2 hours. That's just how it goes, right? Even if you feel like the tank driver that was driving the tank made a dumb decision, and they might have, right? There's players that don't know what they're doing, and they might have made a really dumb decision. I mean, it happens. That tank was going to be lost anyway. There is always going to be room for error when playing Foxhole. There's always going to be a new player that doesn't drive vehicles, that jumps in a vehicle and thinks one thing, they drive straight into it, and they either lose resources, they lose a tank, they lose a vehicle, and it's done. It's just going to happen. Try not to be too upset about it to maximize, your enjoyment of the game. Just be prepared to learn from mistakes and move forward after each failure, right? And that's for new players. Vets try not to freak out on new players, please. You know, when it comes to building placement, you always want to ask, and if you're unsure about where to build structures or where to build defenses, right? There are communities on Foxhole that like to manage the areas that people build in. I typically don't subscribe to that authority, that community authority, because I think Foxhole it's a sandbox game. If you want to build a base there, and you know what you're doing, you should be able to build a base there, you know. But if you don't know what you're doing, right? If you don't know what you're doing, be careful about where you're placing stuff, because you might be building something that is a net negative for the overall push, or offensive or defensive of the area. So you just want to be careful when you're placing stuff. I typically let people lay out the blueprints. Like if you don't know what you're doing in an area and you're not familiar with it, just let people place the blueprints and you help them build it. You know, you're still building, right? You're still helping. Make sure that any building or trench, any placement supports the overall strategy and it doesn't obstruct the player base, right? So the last thing I would say with Foxhole is I would say you need to manage your expectations, right? If you're going to log into Foxhole and you're going to expect to dominate the battlefield, you're going to expect that you're going to be taking a location within the next hour, 30 minutes, even 5 hours, because that's how long you're going to play. Manage your expectations appropriately. You got to understand Foxhole is a long-term war game. It is not a short-term game. You know, you're going to expect to have both small and large roles, depending on each situation, you know, that you're dealing with. You got to be patient with the flow of the game and the flow of logistics. It won't change the outcome, you being frustrated with it, right? If your expectations is up here, I can tell you right now that if your expectations is up here, it's wrong, because Logi's is down here. You know, your expectation has to almost balance out with the logistical chain, right? And that, I mean, this is just a fact. You know, try to get in, have fun. Your expectation should be this: kill colonials. That's it. Done. I've said enough. So this concluded the end of the etiquettes that I want to discuss. There's a lot more things to keep in mind as new players. We're not going to sit here and we're not going to talk all day, even though I could. Just, if you're a new player, try to have fun, right? All these etiquettes, they're not rules that you have to strictly abide by. They're just things that the community knows. There's things that are prevalent in the community that you're now familiar with, so you don't get, you know, upset if somebody talks to you a certain way, because there are those people. And you just got to shake it off, and you just got to be like, you know what? At the end of the day, we're just playing a game. I'm just going to throw a bayonet on a rifle and go rush at the enemy and have some fun, you know, and you should. I actually think that's some of the most fun content, is being an infantryman, throwing a bayonet on a gun and then putting, you know, a grenade in your back pocket and throwing it at the enemy. Like, that's the most satisfying thing to me. Anyway, I'm Social Seb. Thank you for watching. Take it easy.